All right, good morning, Cedar Bridge. Thank y'all for braving the rain and coming out and joining us this morning. And if you decided to stay home where it's nice and warm and cozy, welcome as well. We hope you're joining us online. My name is Tracy, and I'm going to go over just a few quick highlight announcements to get us started this morning. And y'all know the drill. If you have not provided your info to receive our weekly newsletter, we would love for you to do that. That's the best way to stay connected and make sure you don't miss out on anything that's going on at Cedar Bridge. It comes out every Friday to the email that you provide. And so that everything I go over is in the newsletter as well. So you can scan the QR code when it comes back up, or you can just write your info on the little postcards at the back by the computer. Okay, so first we are thrilled to have Pastor Amy back with us this morning. We are so glad to have you, glad that you are recovering well, and it feels good to just be able to put our arms around you this morning. So welcome back, Pastor Amy. Today we have Rooted Kids After Church. So that's part of our children's ministry. It is for our elementary school kids, so they can stay. We will have lunch. It's chicken nugget day today. And we will have a craft and a Bible story and just hang out and have a lot of fun. So that's after church. If you'd like to stay, you can just check in with us at the Seedlings room and then leave them with us and come back and pick them up at 1:30. All right, this week, some things happening. So on Tuesday, we will be providing a meal for Young Lives, which is one of the organizations that we partner with as part of our missions. And I think we are full as far as the sign up and having all the food that we need. So thank you for everyone who signed up. But you are still welcome to join us if you want to go and learn a little bit more about what Young Lives is and just help be there to serve dinner for them. So that's Tuesday night. And then Wednesday night is the last session for No Dumb Questions for Midweek Midrash. So feel free to join us for that. That's led by Laura Morgan and Pastor Amy, and we can provide childcare. You just need to let them know ahead of time so they can arrange that. So that is Wednesday night at 6:30. All right, and then next Sunday, so we're starting something new next Sunday called Linger Longer Sundays. And basically, that's just an intentional time for us to hang out after worship and spend some time together, maybe get to know someone that you haven't met before. Sometimes in the hustle and bustle before we get started in the morning, you don't always have as much time as you would like to talk to people and meet new people. So Linger Longer Sundays is just that. We will have snacks available so no one is hangry after church, and we can just hang out and enjoy a little bit of time together. And next Sunday, during Linger Longer Sundays, we are going to have our first ever kind of Cedar Bridge overview info session. So if you are fairly new to Cedar Bridge, we are going to have a time, it'll be brief, where we can provide you with some information about who we are, some of the major affinity groups that we have, different ways you can get connected, a little bit of overview of like our children's ministry, and just the big highlight things so that you know more about us and ways that you can get plugged into Cedar Bridge. So even if you've been here for a while, you might learn something new. So hang out, linger longer, and learn a little bit more about Cedar Bridge. Okay, spring will hopefully be here soon, and that means softball season will be starting up. And so if you are interested in playing on the Cedar Bridge softball team, let Parker Morgan know. He heads up our softball team. And there's more information in the newsletter about some other things coming up, like Cedars, lunches, the dates for that, a concert at Winterville Christian Church. So make sure you check out the newsletter for all the info. And I think that's it.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to have you all here this morning, and everybody joining us online. It's great to have you as well. If you would, please stand and sing with us as we begin our worship.
Walking the wayside, lost on a lonely road. I was chasing the high life, trying to satisfy my soul. All the lies I believed in left me crying like the rain. Then I saw lightning from heaven, and I've never been the same. I'm gonna climb a mountain, I'm gonna shout about it. I am a child of love. I found a world of freedom, I found a friend in Jesus. I am a child of love. I felt the sting of the fire, but I saw you in the flames. Just when I thought it was over, you pulled me out of the grave. I'm gonna climb a mountain, I'm gonna shout about it. I am a child of love. I found a world of freedom, I found a friend in Jesus. I am a child of love. Yeah. Oh, I am a child of love. Yeah. Oh, I am a child of love. Nothing can change the way you love me. Nothing can change the way I belong to you. Yes, I do. Nothing can separate. Nothing can change the way you love me. Nothing can change the way I belong to you. Yes, I do. Nothing can separate. I'm gonna climb a mountain. I am a child of love. I found a world of freedom, and I am a child of love. I'm gonna climb a mountain, I'm gonna shout about it. I am a child of love. I found a world of freedom, I found a friend in Jesus. I am a child of love. Yeah. Oh, I am a child of love. Yeah. Oh, I am a child of love.
Please hear this call to worship. Each day is a gift from God. Each moment is an opportunity to reach out in service to all creation. Each day is a reminder of the new covenant, not written on stone tablets easily broken, but inscribed on our hearts, filled with joy and hope. Amen.
Down I'm on my knees again, Oh, I need you. Walking down these desert roads, water for my thirsty soul. I need you. Oh, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. Dead man walking slave to sin. I want to know about being born again. I need you. Oh God, I need you. So take me to the riverside. Take me under baptize. I need you. Oh God, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. On my skin. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears. Oh, it's like holy water, your forgiveness. Oh, it's like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears. Oh, it's like holy water on my skin. Oh, it's like holy water on my skin. Oh, it's like holy water.
Amen. Please be seated.
Well, hey, friends. I am very happy to see you today and to be up and at 'em, and proud of y'all for getting out in this mess. I think that you people who are at home might have the best idea today because it's pretty nasty out there. But I'm really glad to see you, and it is good to be back, and I just appreciate and thank you for all of the support while I've been out, and the food and the cards and the encouragement. It has all been so meaningful, and quite frankly, I've been completely overwhelmed by that. So I just really appreciate all of that. We are in the middle of our Epiphany series, and we're looking at encounters with Jesus and what happens as a result of these encounters. We've been looking lately at the Gospel of Luke and asking ourselves questions like, okay, what's happening in this encounter with Jesus, and who is involved, and what changes as a result? Does anything change as a result of this encounter with Jesus? And last week, Aaron talked about Jesus' call to others to follow him, call of the disciples, and calling them to a life of a disciple, and that is one who follows after Jesus and lives life or tries to emulate and live life like Jesus did. Now, our passage today is sort of a description of what that discipleship, what that life with Jesus can look like. What does it look like to really live a life following Jesus? Or what could it look like? What does that kind of life, what does that kind of interaction with Jesus look like? So we are going to look today at Luke's version of what's popularly known as the Beatitudes. I'll read this first and then talk to you about why we like Matthew's version better than this one. But this is the word we need to hear for sure. So Luke's version of the Beatitudes, it's Luke 6. I'll be reading 17 through 26. He came down with them, talking about Jesus. Jesus came down with them and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. They had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were also cured. And everyone in the crowd was trying to touch Jesus, for power came out from Jesus and healed all of them. But Jesus looked up at his disciples and said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you, revile you, and defame you on account of me, the Son of Man. Rejoice on that day and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven, for that is how their ancestors treated the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you've received your comfort. Woe to you who are full and satisfied now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is how their ancestors treated the false prophets." Okay, since this passage is sort of in both Luke and Matthew, let's talk just a little bit about Jesus as depicted in Luke and Jesus as depicted in Matthew. Matthew has a version of this. It is found in the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 5 through 7 has the most popular version of the Beatitudes. Now, was this two different sermons in two different locations? Was this one sermon that the writers adapted to different locations to support their overall themes and story context? That's the more widely interpreted or accepted interpretation, just a little bit of biblical literary theory to help you kind of wrap your head around this. So most scholars believe that there was a common source or common origin for these stories about Jesus, that all the gospel writers kind of pulled from as they wrote their particular gospel, and they pulled from works that had been written before. So scholars call that source Q. Just give it a letter. If you can't figure out a name, just give it a letter. So they called that Q, and so it's thought that various writers pulled from Q and adapted their writing to their theme, to their context, to the overall arc of the story that they were writing. So in other words, for our passage today, it's believed that Luke pulled from this common source. Matthew also pulled for this common source. Matthew worked it one way, Luke worked it another way, and here we have two versions of basically the same teaching. But unlike the Beatitudes in Matthew's Sermon on the Mount, there are 9 blessings in that one. There are no woes. Luke's version, the Sermon on the Plain, as it's known, has 4 blessings and 4 woes, which honestly makes this just a little bit harder to hear, because the two versions are really similar in context, but Luke's version is a little sharper, a little more direct. Matthew's version's a little more general, a little more positive in tone, feels a little more polished maybe. Matthew had a very priestly Jewish lineage focus when writing his gospel, focused on that Jesus has a historical right in lineage to be where he is, The factual proof of Jesus' royal heritage is all in the beginning of Matthew as being from the line of David. Matthew really portrays Jesus as this sort of new Moses. Like Moses received the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, and Jesus teaches from the mountain. Jesus has the story of royal magi visiting him when he's born, and there's the lineage that gives Jesus historical and lineal right to be where he is. And we tend to like Matthew's version of the Beatitudes better, probably because every statement is in some way a blessing. Blessed are you when you're at this place, poor in spirit, or blessed are you when you mourn. We've all been in those places at some point or another, and in the end, in Matthew's version, you get a blessing. We don't see really sweet cards made with Luke's version of the Beatitudes. That's not Hallmark acceptable and doesn't make like good little cute memes. Because Luke is more prophetically focused. See, in Jesus in Luke, we see Jesus as leading from among the people, even down to, calling the disciples right from the edge of the water, giving a sermon like today's story from the plain. Luke makes it clear right from the beginning that Jesus is down low among the people, right in the middle of it, right on level ground. As Luke tells it, the Jesus that is depicted in Luke by other stories that Jesus tells, much more healing, many more healing stories in the Gospel of Luke. We see Jesus is like down and dirty. He teaches, he's in the valleys, he's on the plains, he's meeting people exactly where they are. And Luke really wants to emphasize that Jesus is right here among us. This sermon on the plain really emphasizes that Jesus is in a close relationship with the people on kind of a real world level with where they live. And so just like Matthew followed a pattern when writing the gospel, Luke follows a pattern that has been kept from the very beginning. If you remember in the very beginning in Luke, we have Mary's story when she realizes she is going to have the Messiah. Her story about how God is raising her up from the poor and the meek to later be called blessed. We see Luke gives us the shepherds and the sheep and the angels appearing to the everyday shepherd and sheep herders, We get Luke is all about we're on the plain, we're talking to the outcasts, making it very clear that Jesus is right in the middle of all of this. So let's kind of break this passage down a little bit. Let me read again for you verse 17. He came down with them, Jesus came down with them, and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. They have come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And everyone in the crowd was trying to touch him, for power came out from him and healed all of them. First and foremost, friends, I think Luke wants to make it really, really clear, and for us to get these things right off the bat. Jesus meets us where we are, and Jesus, first and foremost, came to heal. That is what people sought from Jesus. They followed him around, Luke tells us, not because they'd heard these awesome things that Jesus had said. They followed him around because power came out of him and healed them. That is Jesus' first priority. And Luke wants us to be really clear on that. He came down with them and stood on a level place. Luke wants to present a Jesus that is not this high and mighty, I'm up on this mountain teaching you and you can't get to me, but this right here with us, touchable, reachable Jesus. And before teaching anything, Luke 5, we get Jesus calling the disciples in Luke 5, and then we see multiple story of healing right after another. Luke 5 gives us a man with skin disease. Then we get into Luke 6, we get a paralytic. We get the man with the withered hand. There's a little bit of sprinkling in there about fasting and why it's okay to heal people on the Sabbath. But the main thing that Luke is presenting is that Jesus is healing people. So it's important to recognize for us that Jesus' blessings and woes, this teaching context, was given in the context of people coming to be healed. Jesus' healing work was the priority in his ministry. And you know, most of the time in church, it's more fun and it's easy to talk about the teaching because that's something we can replicate. We can say the words that Jesus said. We can say those things to other people. But we need to remember, church, that healing doesn't just look like healing physical ailments. And healing was absolutely first and foremost on Jesus' mind. And healing doesn't always look like curing physical ailments. Healing can look different in our day and in our context, but it is still a really vital calling of us as the church. Healing can look like really seeing someone, really seeing their situation. Healing can look like sitting with someone and meeting them where they are and just being with them, not burdening them with, you need to do this, or you should be doing this, or let me tell you my opinion about what you're doing, but just being with, listening. That can be healing. Healing looks like asking questions and waiting for answers. Healing looks like paying attention and taking time with people. Healing looks like doing the welcoming or the re-welcoming of people into community. And this is important for us to think about because of all the things that Luke could tell us at the beginning and start off talking about how Jesus did life, Luke wants us to know Jesus walked the earth and meets people where they are, meets us in the middle of things, kneels down, looks in the eyes, a God that thinks we're worthy of healing touch, time, and attention. Because remember, when people had physical ailments, Jesus was not just healing their body, but healing a social divide, healing a social brokenness. People with physical ailments in first century Jewish context were forced to be marginalized by society. You couldn't enter places of common people. You couldn't enter places because you had something wrong with you. You were outcast. You were ostracized. So physical ailments, mental instabilities, all of these things that were described as a physical problem in the first century Jewish context, those also made people outcasts, distanced them from their families, from their community, from their places of worship. So healing, we need to remember and wrap our head around that. For Jesus, healing meant also bringing people back into a community where that they had lost. It was redeeming community. Think about, what does it mean for us as the church in this day and age to be focused on being places of healing? What does that look like? We're really good at the teaching parts and the serving parts, and all that is needed. We absolutely need to be on those. The healing parts are stickier, grosser, more time-consuming. It doesn't look like you're getting anywhere. You can't put a bow on it and say, done, that person's healed. It's time-consuming. But Luke tells us, over everything else, this is Jesus' first priority. We have to grapple with that as a church. All right, let's keep going. Luke makes that point really clear, as I hope I've made that point really clear. Then we move on to the blessings and the woes. So we see Jesus adapting this really common teaching method in this next sort of section. It's literally creatively called the blessing and woe teaching method. You see it all through the Old Testament. There's some New Testament too, but especially through the Old Testament. Deuteronomy 28 does this whole list of blessed are those who do this. And woe to, or Deuteronomy uses cursed. Cursed are those who do this. Psalms does this as well. Happy is the one who does this. Cursed is the one who is like this. Jeremiah lists blessings and woes. We see a lot of the blessed one is like a tree by a river, and the wicked one is like blown away by the chaff. We have lots of lists in Scripture. And why does this matter for us in this context? It matters because it is really tempting for us to read any kind of list, anything like this in modern American mindset. Our brains just sort of light up when we see a list of things because we're like, yeah, I got this. I can do this, and I cannot do that. Boom, I'm done. It's just the way that we are wired. We see this as something to accomplish, a list. And really, friends, that says more about our capitalistic society than it does about what Jesus actually meant at all. Because this list of blessings and woes is more of Jesus teaching a way of God, what God is about, not giving us a list of things to do or not to do. We like to make it a list of do's and don'ts. You follow the list or you're out. We like to know who's in and out. We like to know what gets us in and out. We like to label and prioritize and be productive. And God is just not like that. God is not concerned about those things. Rather than establish this new kind of law that now had to be obeyed in a different way, Jesus was describing the nature of God's reign, period. Jesus dared to suggest that God was blessing those who in human society we see as cursed. The poor, the sick, the outcast, those that are made fun of, those that are talked bad about, those who, those are the ones that God is blessing and giving a place of value and honor. And all the things that we in human society value, the rich, the well-liked, those who are doing really well, good things, those are actually missing out on part of God's kingdom. And this doesn't set well with us. It doesn't make any of us feel good. Jesus proclaims these 4 blessings and 4 woes, and it's really symmetrical and balanced. And we have poor sort of versus rich, hungry versus full, weeping versus laughing, people hate you, people speak well of you. As I said, these are not recommendations from Jesus. It's not like Jesus is saying, go become poor, hungry, and talked bad about, because that's the only way that you're going to know me. It's not what Jesus is saying at all. But it's almost as if Jesus is saying, let me give you the lay of the land. As you look around, it looks like the rich and the well-fed and the happy and those who have the best, most popularity and most admired have it made. It looks like God's blessing belongs to them, and that the rest of us, the hungry, the poor, the sad, the excluded, are left out in the cold. It looks like God has forgotten us. But I've come to tell you that the opposite is true, Jesus is saying. The opposite is true. The dawning of God's kingdom belongs to you who are poor, who are hungry, who are sad, and who are excluded. And the rich, happy, well-liked, God isn't here for blessing the empire or blessing the status quo. And if that's your priority, Jesus is saying, then you're about as comfortable as you're going to get. It's as good as it gets for you. There's nothing I can give you. Let's talk about poor and rich specifically, because I think even in our modern context, it's a little bit different than it was in first century Jewish context. And this is really when we start to like Matthew's version a lot better, because many people like to interpret this passage metaphorically. Blessed are the poor, the poverty means spiritual humility. Matthew says, blessed are the poor in spirit. But Jesus is really talking about material possessions, material conditions. There's no in spirit. We can't add it in there just because it makes us feel good. Jesus is redefining who matters, but also what stuff matters, what actually matters. Jesus doesn't say the poor and the poor are blessed because they have this internal quality as being human or having the divine image. They're poor, but they are blessed because God is with them. No, Jesus says, you who have nothing, no possessions, no savings, no plan for paying the bills, you are the ones who are blessed. Again, this is not prescriptive. Jesus is not, I don't think, telling us, blow your money and be irresponsible as a way of life because that's how you find blessing from me. That is not what Jesus is saying. The way that Jesus used the word poor in first century context was very different from how it's used commonly today. So, in ancient Mediterranean perspective, the poor are those who cannot maintain their social status because of circumstances such as debt, being in a foreign land maybe, sickness, being a widow, some kind of accident, some way you can't provide and do the things that are socially supposed to be happening. You are poor. Rather than this fixed social class where, like, okay, if you make less than this amount of money, poverty was sort of this rotating class of people who had misfortune after misfortune that prevented them from gaining a place or getting their foot up or making a step forward in society or in community. And likewise, in the ancient Jewish context, those who were considered rich were not just those who had amassed a lot of wealth or had a lot of wealth, but those who had gained it through exploitation. Because think about this, if you were wealthy and you were in an area like first century Jewish land that was completely occupied by Rome, if you were making it when everyone was occupied, you were somehow collaborating with the enemy to get the position that you have. Because it wasn't possible without some sort of deceit. It wasn't possible without the people who were named as rich. Who were they? Tax collectors. They weren't very high thought of. If you were considered rich in that time period, it was because you got there because you'd been stepping on and moving over others. And we can use this same sort of mindset when we're talking about the other things on the list. Full or well-fed, happy, well-liked or spoken of. Jesus is saying, hey, those who you're doing the best you can and you are still coming up short in society's eyes. You're lacking, you're missing out, you're feeling like you're not good enough, like you don't have it all together. You cannot get it together. Other people judge you, talk bad about you. You are who is ultimately going to experience the fullness of who I am, Jesus says. Because you know what it's like to need. Because you know what it's like to try and try and try and come up short every dang time. And Jesus is saying, I see you. In fact, I'm calling you blessed. Makairos is the Greek word there. And it's a word that denounces this, or like, it sounds like it's deep, abiding joy. It's contentment with coming from not having the right things, but being in the right place. Being in the right place. And Jesus says, hey, you're not alone either, because the prophets, all those prophets who told the truth, who said the unpopular things, nobody liked them either. In fact, some of them were killed, they were cast out, they were the least popular people. But Jesus is saying, they're the ones that were blessed because they were exactly where I needed them to be. And then we get the opposite, which is where it makes our skin cringe a little bit, because Luke says this, but woe. And this is a great word. It's the Greek word oye. It literally means, like, woe. Not just woe, but woe. A guttural despair, grief, like, to you, Jesus is saying. If you're satisfied and full and you always have it all together, and you feel like you are coming out on top in these ways, and you feel like it's because you have done the thing that gets you there, woe to you, because that's as good as it's going to get for you. Not that Jesus is going to do anything differently for these people, but our experience of God's kingdom and God's presence. When we've got it all together and we've done it all right, what the heck do we need? What the heck do we need? Nothing. And Jesus is saying, you have no room for longing, no room for humility, no room for curiosity and questions, because you know it all. You've got it all. Jesus says, there's nothing else. There's no room for me. And woe to you. And then there's that similar reference to false prophets. The false or the lying prophets were the ones who said exactly what everybody wanted to hear, and they were praised for it. You make us feel good, yay. But in reality, they were just saying that everything is great when suffering was widespread and destruction was everywhere. See, Jesus ensured that there could be absolutely no doubt in his hearers' mind, friends, that God's glory, presence, grace, love, blessing were already with the people that were the most outcast among them. The poor, the hungry, the grieving, the persecuted. Jesus wanted to make it really, really clear. There's no doubt. I'm right here with you. They were the ones who most embodied the value and the vision of God's reign. But those who were the most comfortable, the most connected, the most rich, the most in control would find it harder to understand and experience God's upside down way of being and would struggle to experience that liberating life and know that it comes from God. See, God is on board with this. And it's our work to do to get on board with it too. Because as we read this passage, we want to say, well, where do I stand? Where am I in this passage? And these statements are unsettling because they challenge us being comfortable. Jesus's woes are not meant to shame people, but to wake people up. To wake people up. What is it that we value, and what is it that we reject? As a society, as a church, as a people, individual people. If we're comfortable with while other people are suffering, what is that saying about us? What does that say about our participation in unjust systems if we're like, well, it ain't me, so I'm not going to worry too much about that? Jesus is constantly flipping this contemporary expectation of what is valued upside down. And as I thought about this week, I was like, you know what? I say that all the time. Jesus is flipping the contemporary, upside down. And that's true, but really, Jesus said it first. Contemporary Christianity flipped it upside down. And we have to go back and go, wait a second. We got to get back to what Jesus was saying. Because the reversal that we like to claim is that, you get blessing after you do enough good things or acquire enough things. We have to do the work to flip it back over and understand what Jesus originally intended. And I think, friends, we're going to find that we fit into both of these categories at one time or another in different respects. And so to the extent that we find ourselves in need, in despair, left out, talked about, Jesus brings us words of blessing and encouragement and says, I am here with you. I am here with you. And to the extent that we find ourselves in prosperity or satisfaction or comfort or privilege, Jesus brings us words of challenges. Jesus exhorts us to share God's blessings with our neighbors and with all of creation. It's not like it's two different ideas. It's two sides of the same gospel. And this is where the hard and healing work of Jesus comes in. Because we are generally okay with thinking God's blessing rests on those who are in the most need, the most unhappy, the most left out, the most ill thought of. We're okay with calling out injustice or at least nodding when somebody else does. We're good with that. But the work of Jesus lies in us asking ourselves, what are we going to do to help bring heaven to earth in these places? What is ours to do? Are we going to sit around and be comfortable when other people suffer? Are we going to do something about those who suffer in different ways? Because Jesus gives us three main ways that people are suffering. Materially, the poor, the hungry, I lump those two together. Those who just can't get a break financially. How are we going to be heaven on earth in those places? And I'm going to say two things. I want you to hear this. One, this is the easiest place for us to show up. It's the easiest place for us to show up. Give money, bring things to a place that needs it. It's the easiest place. It sometimes can be what makes us feel the best about ourselves. It's absolutely a worthy effort and absolutely the work of Jesus. Jesus wouldn't have said it first if it was not important. Hear me say that. But if this for us is always our go-to, then I would ask you to think about and challenge yourself. Am I being challenged to show up in a different way? I show up real well with the serving and the donating and all the things, and those are absolutely necessary. Let me hear me say that. But if that's always your go-to, because it is the one that we cling to first, then is God challenging you to show up in a different way? And that's something that only you can answer. What are some other ways? What about those who suffer emotionally? Jesus mentions the sad, the depressed, the ones who are crying now, can't seem to stop. What is ours to do? How do we bring heaven to earth in those places? Now, let me also make it clear. I don't think Jesus is asking us to do things that we cannot do. We can do what we can do. But we can all say, hey, I can think that person who's emotionally wrecked right now, I can withhold judging thoughts about them. I can not think that I'm better because I've got it all together at this moment. I can hear somebody's fears and concerns and believe them and not brush it off. That's a way I can bring heaven to earth. And somebody who's struggling emotionally, I can assume somebody is trying their best. I can do things like go to therapy or refer a friend to therapy. What does it look like for us to be a healing place where we're helping to bring heaven to earth in these situations? Materially, we've talked about that. Emotionally, and Jesus drives it real home socially here. Those who are talked about, thought good of, the whole rich and healing part in general, bringing people back into community. Bringing people into community is a big deal for Jesus. So what is our work to do there? How do we follow Jesus and look for ways to bring heaven to earth in places where there's a social struggle? Those that are talked about, those that don't fit in, those that people would rather not come to the party. How are we to bring heaven to earth there? What does that look like? Are we willing to ask questions and listen? Are we able to see where there is a broken community and that's a problem and do what is needed to bridge and bring people back in? Is that as big of a priority for us as it seems like it is for Jesus? These are not questions that I have answers to. These are questions that we need to wrestle with as the people of God. It's our work to do, finding the places where we can bring the love of Jesus into these places. We get to be part of redemption when we do that, friends. We get to be able to redeem what is important, to deem what is important again. That's our work. We get to deem what is blessed and what is beloved. We get to deem what is important. So will we follow Jesus' example and deem worthy and lovely that which may not be society's first pick? Or will we be satisfied with blessing what makes us comfortable? That's the choice Jesus is giving us in this passage, friends. Let's pray. God, we are so grateful for a community where we can come before you and wrestle with hard things that your word gives us sometimes. Lord, help us to know where you want us to show up, where you are calling us to be your light, where you're calling us to bring a little snippet of heaven to earth. Lord, help us to look at people and situations in our world with your eyes that look not at what we seem or deem as important as a society, but to look with your eyes at what sees us and those around us exactly as we are, beloved children of yours. Lord, we love you, we praise you, we thank you for this day, and it's in Christ's name I pray. Amen. All right, friends, if you are familiar with Cedar Bridge, we like to have a time of response at the end of every worship service. And that is a time for you all to move around, to put some feet to some things that maybe you're thinking about. We have lots of ways for you to respond. We have our communion set up on both sides of the worship space. We have gluten-free on this side. If you would like to take a piece of the bread and dip it into the cup. And remember that this is a community where we're being asked to do the things that are ours to do to help bring that love of Jesus to earth, to fruition, to other people's lives. That's an option for you. We have our prayer request basket at the back, and we also have our offering basket. If giving is a part of your worship, we would be honored to receive that. And that basket is at the back, and our prayer team prays regularly for requests. And so if you would like for us to join you in something that you are praying for, we would love to do that. I'll be standing in the back. I would love to talk with you, to pray with you, to set up a time to get together later on if that would be helpful for you. And as always, you can sit and sing. You can sit and listen. You can stand and sing with our praise team as they come forward. But this time is for you and for your response. So respond as you feel led.
Please stand and sing with us. I've had $1 to my name. I've had friends that walked away. And it's not lost myself a time or two. And there were bridges crossed and burned. Through all the wreckage I have learned, there's one thing that I can never lose. If I've got Jesus, I've got all that I could ever need. Take the world away from me, and I'll be okay. If I've got Jesus, there's a hope that's living deep inside, and a joy that I could never hide, and a safe place to fall. If I've got Jesus, I've got it all. I've seen weakness turn to strength. I've seen failures met with grace. And it's not from what I've done, it's Christ in me. A miracle I can't explain. Oh, He's given me His name. I'm the richest man that I could ever be. If I've got Jesus, I've got all that I could ever need. Take the world away from me, and I'll be okay. If I've got Jesus, there's a hope that's living deep inside, a joy that I could never hide, and a safe place to fall. If I got Jesus, I got it all. And someday that trumpet's gonna sound, and the King of heaven will ride upon the clouds coming down. And I hit my knees, oh Lord, and sings my soul. I'm going home. a joy that I could never hide, and a safe place to fall. If I got Jesus, I got it all. If I got Jesus, I got it all.
Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I've tried to win this war, I confess. My hands are weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight. No matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen. So in all things be my life and my breath. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Oh, I will trust in you. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I'll go you've not already stood. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Oh, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I will trust in you.
As we leave this place, we trust that God looks upon us with compassion, that Jesus calls us to live freely and abundantly, renewed and connected. We receive this grace and share it by God's Spirit. We are so grateful, and we will go and live differently in this world.